us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to introduce Jenny Downs, who's a physiotherapist, as they're called in Australia, physical therapist in the US, who has over 20 years of clinical pediatric experience and has worked in children's hospitals and centers in Perth, Sydney, London, and since completing her PhD in 2003, she's worked in research on several rare disorders, but with a particular focus on Rett syndrome. She's a chief investigator for a program of research with the Australian Rett syndrome study. She's investigated so many areas of Rett syndrome, but has a particular interest in functional abilities and spinal health, and is really particularly interested in translating these research findings into clinical practice. She serves on the Inter-Rett database team with Dr. Helen Leonard and quite a few others. And your participation in that database, which is funded by rettsyndrome.org, has provided a lot of information for her publications and findings that she has discovered in her work and in her research. So we're so glad to have her here tonight. This is a first presentation of its kind to our community, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're going to share with us today, Jenny, or tonight, I should say, for us, and in the morning for you. So we have plenty of time tonight. Let me go ahead and Megan will turn the screen over to you.
Okay, so I need to show my screen, yes, and now I need to do my slides, yes?
There we go. Yeah, I can see the slide sorter view.
Yes, so I'm just sort of clicking on it again, and there they are. Okay, we're there.
Thank you for sharing your webcam so we can all meet you personally.
Thank you, that's lovely. It's lovely to have this opportunity to connect with you all, and this particular topic is quality of life in children with Rett syndrome. And as you know, I work with Dr. Leonard very, very closely on all of our Rett syndrome related topics. And we've looked at, and in the couple of previous webinars that I presented, I was able to describe the structure of our database, and you would see from some of those diagrams that there are lots and lots of outcomes that we've been interested: physical health outcomes, functional outcomes, well-being outcomes for the families, lots and lots of outcomes. And what we realize is that when we're looking at an outcome in isolation, what we're particularly interested in our hearts is that that outcome be better for families, but we're also interested in how any one particular aspect of the lives of the girls is going to be contributing to the girls' quality of life. So that stimulated us to put the focus a little bit more on the quality of life, and we've done one study in this area, and that's what I will be presenting today. So firstly, us, I'm from Perth in Western Australia, which is a long way from most of you who are listening, but here, just from these few little slides, you can see we have a lot of, we're an island country, so we have a lot of beach environments around us. We have a very big dry desert centre, and so we have a lot of very stark but very stunning inland environments. And the bottom left picture shows our city, Perth, which is situated on a river, and for some reason we have black swans. So that's one of the distinctive characteristics about our particular part of the world. And down in the bottom corner, you can see our team, Helen Leonard in the front. And also notice Amy Epstein, who has the red shirt there. And she has been particularly instrumental in conducting the interviews that will form the basis for what I will be discussing in today's webinar. So in the first instance, what is quality of life? I think we all know intuitively what our quality of life is made up of. It's our satisfaction with a whole range of our life experiences. So it's not surprising that this has lots of components, and some of these components or these aspects are universal. They relate to our health, they relate to our emotional well-being, to our social connections. But other aspects of quality of life can be very specific to particular populations. For example, if you have low back pain, then you would have your pain could be contributing to your quality of life. If you have a particular neurological disorder, then there will be aspects of that disorder that could be contributing to your quality of life. And in the quality of life world, each of these aspects are called domains, and I'm introducing that word because I'm sure I will use it several times during this presentation. So it's simply aspects. It's an area. And really, as I mentioned with our very first slide, where in all of our health-related activity, our education-related activity, our therapy-related activity, an outcome that is also associated with favourable quality of life is really the goal for the children. So when we look at all the different measures that there are for children's quality of life, we find lots of generic measures. And for the children, this usually talks about aspects of their self-esteem, their own autonomy, being opportunities to be physically active, emotional well-being, and social functioning. And then when we go to the specific scales that are for particular conditions, then we see new domains that relate to symptoms or access to services. And that would all seem to make sense. And so when we look at a range of measures altogether, we probably have some guidance as to what quality of life means in Rett syndrome. But from our experience, from our own clinical experience, our research experience, it seemed to us that the match was not complete, and there just could be aspects of life for girls with Rett syndrome that we were not properly capturing if we use some of the available measures. And so we do have a first study that has looked at quality of life in Rett syndrome, and this has come from the natural history study, and there's been a very substantial sample size of more than 200 children who were aged between 8 and 18 years. And the parents completed the child health questionnaire, which is one of the many measures that are available. And what the team found was that greater clinical severity was associated with poorer motor function and also more difficulties with the physical aspects of quality of life. And if motor function was poorer, then that was sometimes associated with better psychosocial quality of life. And this suggests important leads as to how we might continue looking at quality of life for the child with Rett syndrome. So when we ask the question again, what does quality of life mean for the child with Rett syndrome? If we go back and think about the many challenges in daily life, we remember that most girls will need support to manage most of their needs, that many aspects of Rett syndrome are absolutely unique. And overall, the clinical signs of Rett syndrome thereafter affect the girls' activities and participation. And when we look through the literature very carefully, we find that there isn't a grassroots investigation, and that's what we set out to do, to look from the grassroots at what quality of life means for children with Rett syndrome. And we were certainly felt very justified in this study because there have been two grassroots investigations in relation to children with autism and children with cerebral palsy, but more severely affected children with cerebral palsy. And those studies were interview studies, and aspects of quality of life came up that were not captured in some of the available scales. So we really felt that we did not want to leave the stone unturned. So the objectives for today are to identify the domains of quality of life for children with Rett syndrome and to provide some description of what those, the elements of which those domains were comprised, and also to consider how we might apply this knowledge in day-to-day care and management. And really, at the end, I will sort of think about the many challenges that we have for our clinical and research community. So those are the objectives for today. So it's this is a wonderful opportunity to share this new information that we have and our thinking, and that could set us up for some important subsequent studies. So we conducted an interview study. It's called a qualitative study, and we recruited 21 families who were all registered and participating with our Australian database, and 2 of those participants were fathers, and the families came from urban and rural settings. They lived across 6 states or territories of Australia, so we crossed the country. And the children were aged between 7 and 18 years of age. And the children varied by the type of mutation, their capacity to walk and feed, and comorbidities such as epilepsy and scoliosis and behavioural issues. So what we wanted to do was capture as much variability of Rett syndrome. We wanted that reporting to acknowledge as many aspects of Rett syndrome as we could. And by the time we got to the end of our interviews, we were not getting new ideas and new themes. So this sample size of 21 for this particular study had provided us with saturation in the ideas. So that was very, very important for the validity of the study. So Amy Epstein, who you met on the front slide, conducted interviews with parents, and this was our interview schedule, which we used for each of the families. And this 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 questions provided an enormous wealth of information that I will go on to report in subsequent lives. So we asked, what areas of life are important for your daughter's happiness? We wanted to know when things were going great for her, what were the things that were happening? When things weren't so good, what were the things that were happening? What sort of activities make her feel good about herself? What challenges her? And we asked parents to tell us, what is a good quality of life for your daughter? So we had worked with other researchers in Australia who have a special expertise in studying quality of life for children, and developed this set of questions. So we're very excited that by looking at this area with Rett syndrome, we've been able to draw upon the expertise of people in other but related fields. So that is very exciting to use their expertise for Rett syndrome. So, whoops, I've lost yes, here we are. Our methods, we conducted semi-structured interviews over the telephone, and we used our questions, but when parents responded to us with an answer, we asked additional probing questions. How do you know this? What does this look like to an outside observer? Why do you think this is? So we could actually articulate how the girl was demonstrating her feelings of satisfaction about this aspect of her life, rather than how the mum felt she felt, or how the dad felt she felt. We wanted to frame our coding and the themes that we were able to develop in actual observations and what could be observable to the outside observer. So this is called, as I said, this is called a qualitative study, and we would code observable behaviours. So if a parent reported that she's feeling happy, we would say, well, how did you know that? Well, she was smiling and laughing. So therefore we had something observable that we were then able to use in the development of our themes. And from all our reading in the literature, we haven't read of anyone else using the notion of observable behaviours. So this has been a very exciting part of determining how we can find this out, and that's been a very exciting part of the study. So what emerged from all of the interview data were 10 quality of life domains. There were 3 that broadly related to health and well-being. That's physical health, body pain and discomfort, and the behavioural and emotional well-being. There were 3 domains that related to daily activities: communication, movement and mobility, and the stability of daily routines. And there were 4 themes that related to community immersion and services. One was social connectedness. This natural environment came up very strongly, variety of activities and the provision of targeted services. So from my introductory slides, you would see that this pattern of themes is consistent with the theoretical idea of quality of life. So that gives is part of us feeling comfortable that we have captured something that is has validity. So it's also consistent with our knowledge about Rett syndrome, and so that is also important for our ideas as to how we interpret the validity of the outcomes. So what I'll now do is describe these domains in a little bit more detail. So for the health and well-being domains, firstly, overall physical health, and parents talked about the overall body health and wellness of their daughter. They talked about episodes of illness, episodes of seizure activities, their daughter's sleeping patterns and subsequent energy levels through the day, difficulties with comorbidities such as scoliosis, and difficulties, side effects, particularly of epilepsy medications, and the need for sometimes quite frequent hospitalizations. And so, there it is. I'll go back, I'm sorry. Yes, here we are. When she was having seizures, there we are. She would have them in clusters, and because her medication was making her groggy, she was falling asleep all the time. Changing medications multiple times seemed to make a difference to her. So here was an aspect of her physical health that was very much impacting her quality of life. When she's exhausted, she has very low tolerance for everything. So whether it's physio, for learning, for eating, whatever, if she's tired, she doesn't tolerate a lot of things. And parents often talked about the longer term effects of seizures. So after an episode of seizure activity, their daughter would be low in energy for several days afterwards. So the next domain related to body pain and discomfort. And here parents talked about soreness and achiness and pain associated with sometimes physical ailments, often in relation to gastrointestinal symptom issues. Particularly commonly reported was issues in relation to constipation, in relation to the musculoskeletal system, and perceived discomfort with prolonged immobilization, and also environmental factors in relation to, for example, room temperature, potentially relating to autonomic issues. And so here is a quote: keeping her comfortable really requires regular position changes because she can't move herself, and that's very important for her comfort and well-being. So if she stays in the same spot all the time, she'll end up with some pressure sores. So regular position changes were perceived as being helpful to their daughter's quality of life. Our third domain was behavioural and emotional well-being, and this drew in some of the specific behavioural aspects of Rett syndrome that some girls experience. So again, just to reiterate, we coded the actions and the behaviours rather than a summary feeling that the child was happy or anxious or frustrated. So the sorts of behaviours we would be coding would be happy behaviours, smiling, laughing, grinding of teeth or shaking, hand flapping or rocking was often very excited, and self-injurious behaviours often indicative of feelings of frustration or anxiety. So her self-injury, she would be frustrated and she'd be biting her hands. She'd tend to really want to bite them, and if she couldn't get access to her hands, she'll swing her arms up and bite between her elbow and her shoulder. And this was the mother of a 16-year-old girl who was reporting on her daughter's self-injury as being an issue that she perceived from her daughter's behaviours, obviously, that that was detrimental to her quality of life. So we then have domains in the area of the girl's daily activities. And the first one related to communication skills and difficulties. And here we have Asket's parents referred to their daughter's abilities and their challenges in relation to engaging in both verbal and non-verbal communication. So this included vocalizations, the making of eye contact, her use of gestures and expressions and other body language, use of communication aids, iPads, sometimes iTobies, and simple communication books, and also that there were sometimes unknown causes or triggers for why a girl wanted to communicate, but that was sometimes very difficult to interpret. And so one of these quotes, she would be looking everywhere, whether she's really happy looking at TV or something like that, and then she'll look back at you and just trying to get it across as if to say, you know, I really love this. It's just all through her eyes, basically, and the smile, the expressions on her face, which let you know that she's just really happy and content to be doing the activities. So really that was a very lovely slide that was illustrating an unfolding engagement that was completely non-verbal, but very effective between this teenage girl and her mother. Our next domain was movement and mobility, and this related to both using gross and fine motor skills. The girl could have been using these skills independently or with assistance, sometimes with the assistance of mobility aids, such as using a standing frame, often with using particular orthopedic appliances like having her AFOs on, and sometimes getting more out of her walking activities. And many parents talked about the pleasure of movement, how if their child often demonstrated pleasure in anticipating that she was about to get up and go somewhere, or the pleasure in being physically active. So here is one quote. She would normally never walk uphill. We'd find her at the lowest point in the playground because she'd just gradually walk backwards. But more and more, if something is motivating her, which you will find that she will walk up hills. She initiated walking up a ramp where you get onto the horse at horse riding. We were busy getting the horse ready, and she walked in the gate and started to walk up the ramp. So here was the pleasure of movement, especially when it was related to goals that were especially motivating for the child. The next domain that I would like to illustrate is that of routines. And this domain we have not seen as a domain of quality of life in the literature. So to our knowledge, this is a newly identified domain. And it is consistent with using activities in a familiar way so that it provides comfort to the girl. Maintaining familiarity, maintaining consistency. And this was using strategies around sleep time, using gentle music in the bedroom, in school, having the same teacher, the same classroom, or favourite TV programs or DVD selections. And here is a quote that illustrated this domain. She likes the routine. She likes her bedroom because that's her bedroom. She knows that's her room. She likes her routine at night time. She tends to like the same people to care for her as well. She likes what she knows. So anything unfamiliar, anything new takes her an awful long time to become accustomed to and to accept and then to alike. And that was, as you can see, the mother of a 9-year-old girl. So our next domains related to community immersion and services. And the first one we've called that social connectedness. And this was moments that can occur in participating with social activities at home, with siblings, in the school, with their classmates, in the community, at different play groups or clubs. And parents spoke of the importance of treating their daughter the same, of not having her socially isolated. And some of the examples were just very, very wonderful for us to listen to. Their daughters enjoying parties, enjoying going to a sibling soccer match, and enjoying the activity on the side of the field, and then enjoying joining in with the team after the game had actually finished. So these were some really lovely stories for us to listen to. But here is a quote. I think she feels part of it. We've gone camping a couple of times with my brother and his 4 girls. So when they all get together and they sleep in their sleeping bags and sit around the campfire, she likes that she's included, and that was a very strong theme in our from our interviews. Another theme from the interviews was the natural environment, and this also, to our knowledge, we have not seen this in the quality of life literature, and to us, as far as we know, this is also a newly identified theme. And this related to environmental factors, animals, often pets within the house, sometimes companion dogs, plant life, the things to see, the things to feel, the sensation of the elements, often sand, mud, water, and also the characteristics of different weather patterns, being out in the sunshine, being out in the wind. And those appeared to be very valuable experiences for many of the girls. And so here is a quote that illustrates this this domain. That's her sense of freedom. She gets to feel the wind in her hair. She looks for bird life up in the leaves. She looks for kangaroos and emus. So that's just one of her beautiful things that she really does enjoy. She does feel good about herself because she gets to be out there. So parents reported very favourable, observable responses in their children. And this, to our knowledge, as I said, appears to be a newly described domain for quality of life. There's also the domain of variety of activities, and the parents reported the valuable aspects of different activities such as swimming, riding a bike, sometimes riding on adapted bikes, but sometimes being a passenger in those little carriages you can pull along behind your bike, horse riding, listening to music, watching DVDs, going on outings, perhaps to the restaurant, sometimes to the theatre. And this was really, here is one example. She can swing a swing by herself. She can ride a horse by herself and swim by herself. Whenever she goes swimming, people are just blown away because on land she's wobbly and she can need a lot of support. And this mother has then concluded, I think it must be so good for her to astound people. And I think that crosses for all of girls with Rett syndrome, for the things that they can do. It really can be astounding, and that must be a wonderful experience for the girls. So this is really the opposite of our domain of routines, where variety is really doing lots of different things rather than set patterns of activities. But what we often found is that within this variety, parents reported that routines would be an important part of that variety. For example, swimming was always on Saturday morning or always on Monday after school, or there were specific routines in relation to getting on the horse. So there were aspects of how the variety in activities was conducted that meant we were sometimes seeing a blend of two domains from what how we're describing this in terms of quality of life. And our 10th domain related to the provision of targeted support services. And so this referred to access and the quality of support services. This included medical professionals, support in the schools, support in the therapies, the support of people in the community, and the support of respite services. So it included knowledgeability of the professionals as to how they were going to examine or assess the girl with Rett syndrome, and thereafter how they were going to put together their plans and their and setting goals with families, and also their accessibility. So we have a quote here: when we start a new year, it requires us to schedule visits from all of the therapists in order for the staff to then implement any of the things that have been shown to them from a previous year. The knowledge that gets passed from one year to the next isn't as seamless as it should be, and that is letting her down. She sort of goes backwards a bit in those areas rather than building on the previous year. So here was a mother reporting that she felt very dissatisfied for the way the start of each school year was not off to a seamless start. Rather, it took time before it then progressed forward, and she observed that her daughter had increased periods of inactivity rather than the same levels of activity that she might have been participating in at the end of the previous year. So that was one example. So now that I've described our 10 domains, what we can see is that they're broadly consistent with the theory of quality of life, except we have two new domains, the domain of routines and the domain of the natural environment. And each of our domains has elements that are unique to Rett syndrome. And when we put the aspects or all of our domains up against a selection of other quality of life measures, there are many areas that are in common, but there are also many areas that are not addressed. And so therefore we potentially have a new framework that can help to indicate how we should view quality of life in Rett syndrome. So one of our new domains, just a little bit more, was stability of daily routines. And here we have security and enjoyment of familiar activities, regular timing of activities, people who understood the girls well, and familiar environments. And this appeared to reduce stress. And we do note that in other conditions, in, for example, autism, there is a very strong reliance on routines that can actually be counterproductive for that child in being able to engage in other activities. But that was not the way that our domain was articulated. Our domain was not excessive reliance, but as I mentioned before, it was the stability in association with variety. So it was a little bit different to what we might see in other aspects of neurological disorders. And what we also found was that the routines help the child to accept and derive pleasure from new experiences. I would also note that stability of daily routines is also a very important part of child development, and it's what we as parents would provide to all of our children, whether or not they had Rett syndrome. So the other new domain was the natural environment. And again, if we go to the literature, we can find papers that talk about the natural environment as a very valued resource for us all in the general population. There's potential for it to promote our own mental health and well-being. And if we are unwell, there is evidence that exposure to a natural environment can enhance our recovery. And this is in the general population, in the general literature. And the sorts of mechanisms that are suggested in relation to these points are that being in the natural world is good for our memory processes, it potentially increases our attention, and it also potentially has very positive effects on mood. So this was such a strong theme from our interviews, and it's our feeling that this really needs to be more formally investigated for the value for girls with Rett syndrome and how that might inform daily activities and beyond. So those were our two very unique domains, but what you would also notice from each of the domains is that there were aspects of behaviour that were particular to Rett syndrome, episodes of anxiety and self-injurious behaviours, the impacts of comorbidities, epilepsy and gastrointestinal issues. We also heard of the pleasure of walking and and changing positions. And we also heard about the pleasure of being able to communicate choices and more. So the unfolding example of communication was an example of that, not just being yes or no, I want to watch this DVD, this thing that I'm doing, but it was more about how she felt about the particular activity, which was gives deeper meaning to quality of life. We can communicate at a deeper level. And a while ago, I was visiting a school in Australia, and I was which had quite a few girls with Rett syndrome attending that school. And I was talking to the speech pathologist there, and there was a very, very beautiful story of a girl who has Rett syndrome and has a very large communication book. This was before eye tracking and other ways of communication, but still her communication book is still what she uses today. And they said, how was your weekend? And she wasn't happy with the basic choices, good, bad, or whatever those particular choices were. And she kept indicating she wanted them to turn the page. And they did, and they thought, well, this doesn't make sense. We asked her how her weekend is. She turned pages, and eventually she came to the page that related to when she was in her art class. And here was the option for her to choose the word plain. And here was her weekend. It had been an ordinary weekend, ordinary routines, and nothing particular had happened, and she was able to make that choice. And that was an episode that was enormously satisfying both for her and her communication partners. So therein lies the enormous value of our communication systems for girls with Rett syndrome, which you will have heard in some of the other webinars, the details about that. And also knowledgeability and quality of care of services, and these particularly related to the challenges for clinicians and therapists and educators to understand detail about a rare disorder when they may not have experience with lots of girls with that rare disorder. So therein lies challenges for us as a clinical and research community. So, okay, another one of our questions was we asked parents to tell us what does she need for a quality of life. And a lot of the responses of parents related to their daughter's personal self, her own personality, and really she is first in this. Her own personality is central to the idea of her quality of life. And these are the sorts of example suggestions. These are suggestions from the parents. She needs time. Offer her choices and let her make decisions. Let her have cheeky fun. I liked that. Nurture her independence. Speak at eye level. Find an effective form of communication. Find what motivates her. Celebrate what she can do. I love that one. And keep an eye on her disposition. Find things to smile and be happy about. So mood and anxiety were very much aspects that parents wanted to preempt and find routines and satisfying aspects in the girl's life. So then came suggestions in relation to health, making sure that she is comfortable and pain-free. The quality of her sleep was felt to be very important. knowing what's upsetting her, especially internal things. That's a parent's words. And potentially this relates to aspects of gastrointestinal function, or when she's unwell with a cold or a flu, perhaps a urinary tract infection, and really the challenges of finding out what can be causing distress can be a very difficult time in terms of quality of life. And so parents then talked about the right medical care, and I can't quite read that because of my screen. The right medical care and equipment at the right time. And I'm reminded of whenever a person is prescribed a medication, it is the right dose at the right time. And really we're taking that concept more generically to the right intervention at the right time for the girl. And again, parents talked about the rhythm of walking as being a pleasurable aspect to the girl's life. So then they talked about the world out there, people with whom she's developed relationships, social interactions and being included, having an effective team for their child, and this referred to those who were professionals or not professionals. Parents talked about outings, getting her feet muddy, how much she loves the beach, she loves the waves. She will turn her face for it to be head on into the wind, to feel that wind on her face. And parents also wanted better awareness of Rett syndrome, and for the community not to be judging their daughter. And in supporting their daughter's quality of life, families needed support for themselves, and that's very much a part of what rettsyndrome.org is doing with this webinar series, but resources for families. What do I do if? Families talked about prioritising relationships in their lives over stuff, and also mentioned that they need support to then be able to provide the best support for their daughter. And again, rettsyndrome.org does such a fabulous job of providing support to families, and ways to target that more specifically would be a part of our future thinking. So here are our challenges. How best do we measure quality of life in girls with Rett syndrome? How can we best measure their pain, the presence of pain, and identify what that pain is related to, and thereafter institute the best plan that is timely and can manage that discomfort? We desperately need as a group to develop and test behavioural interventions that reduce challenging behaviours, and thereafter promote feelings of success for the girls. We need widespread access to the very, very effective communication strategies that have been developed and are wonderful, but enabling their access is a very important goal. We need to better understand routines, including regular position changes from a physical point of view, and potentially we need to better understand mini routines within daily activities that potentially we could use to advantage to reduce stress, but not prohibit engagement with a wider range of life experiences. And our challenges also include a very robust social network for effective community engagement, and including regular contact with the natural environment. So these are a whole range of challenges that have jumped out at me, and there will be more from these interview findings. And what they illustrate to you is a very powerful intersection between families themselves, between schools, clinicians, and therapists, and also our policymakers. So really there will hopefully be angles that we can improve with regard to quality of life as being a downstream outcome for all of the other aspects of our care. So to summarise, with these interviews, with our investigation in the literature, we've shone the spotlight on quality of life in children with Rett syndrome, and indeed many aspects of the quality of life were unique. And therein lie our challenges: measurement, identification of what we need to do and examine how it is effective, and thereafter ensuring that we have access to relevant supports because of the challenges of girls living in such widely dispersed geographical locations. So this slide is about contacting us. As Paige introduced me at the beginning, I'm a part of the Australian Rett Syndrome Study and also the International Rett Syndrome Study. And I work with Dr. Helen Leonard, who many of you will have met or know. And so these are our contact details. We have our website. On our website, we also have some lay summaries of some of our publications. And we also have a Facebook page. And we also have an email address. So these are the ways you can contact us if need be. And I would like to acknowledge, of course, all of our participating families and the parents who participate with our communication reference, our consumer reference group. We value our very rich conversations and discussions with them because they provide guidance as to how we look at the next question that we're asking, or what our next question might be. We've had financial support from the University of Western Australia and also the Department of Health for this quality of life study, and I pay particular acknowledgements to Amy Epstein, who's a member of our group and conducted very, very robust interviews from which we could derive our data. Thank you very much. Hello?
Jenny, thank you so much. Hi, Jenny. Sorry, I was
yes,
thinking you. I know, this is the part that's awkward for you in a webinar. You don't realize that there are a lot of people listening to you right now. There really are.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. I was speaking. I just had I had myself on mute and didn't realize it. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Thank you. This is incredible, incredible research and incredible findings. Thank you for taking the time. These are all things that are very intuitive and known to so many of us. And
absolutely.
And as you said, the outcomes for this are important at many levels, just for us as families to have a compass of where to go. Also looking at outcome measures for research studies.
Absolutely.
And maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And the other is, in the area of political advocacy to...
Yes.
Yeah, to really ensure that we get some public government support for achieving all of the things which we want to do for our children, but it's really hard sometimes to find the resources to provide all the right things that we know.
Absolutely. And I think it's extraordinary when we ask the question, what should we do? 21 parents told us probably everything we do need to do. So absolutely, it is knowledge that we all have that we need to put systematically to, as you said, a compass to give it direction. Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a few questions that families have submitted into the queue. Can we go through those?
Yeah.
Great. The first one, if you wouldn't mind going back to one of the slides, the families would like to rest for a while on your slide of the interview questions.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, I probably have to go through this a little bit. Can I change it back to my previous? I just don't want to lose
you can go to
my
slide
screen. If I can do that and show, okay, yes, all right. I just don't want to lose getting back to our interview schedule. Yes, there we are. There you are. Okay, interview schedule for parents. Can you see that? Yes,
perfect. The parent asking this question, if you can just let me know if this is the slide you were referencing. She's asking that, or she's commenting that she feels these are really important questions that they'd like to go over as a family to help develop a meaningful adult day for their daughter. So these are the questions you asked yourselves, but would you recommend that these could be a good guideline for families?
Absolutely, yes, I do. We have focused this study on children aged 6 to 18. One of the important areas for us to also look at is adults. I think I would be using the same questions. Maybe I would change them slightly with longer time to think about it, but I think they are absolutely our basis for what we would then use. Mm. I think they're great. They're great questions.
Great.
Mm.
Okay.
I think that's it's a very good start. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So we can just leave that slide up until we get to another one where
Yeah,
you might
it
move
is.
around.
Yeah.
Okay, so a parent is asking about the variety of activities and is wondering your opinion about whether variety might be an indicator of sensory seeking behavior because their child really loves wind, speed, sensations that contribute to her senses. And if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I guess I find that very difficult to know if it's a sensory seeking. We are all sensory seeking persons. We all love to feel the warmth, feel the wind, we feel the cold. We're then guided as to what we're going to do about it or whether we're going to enjoy that bracing feeling. It could well be a part of a sensory seeking, I guess you could use the word phenotype. It's very difficult to be absolutely sure on that. I think the bottom line is that if she is enjoying that, that is, and it is a very important part of her life.
Right. Okay, and I know that you're not a licensed psychologist, but
Yes, definitely not.
but in the area of this research, I know that you've carefully considered the things that you're asking. So if a parent has a question about how do you really define stability of daily activities? So if our children seem to not have any issue with change, they don't have troubles with transitions, I mean, it's basic it's an understanding to me, right, that all of us
Yes.
feel a certain solid foundation when things are, stable, and
Yes.
that allows us a platform to be comfortable with change. But
Yes.
can you
Yes.
define that a little bit in terms of what you are meaning with that?
I guess for that particular child, she is not having difficulty with those aspects of her life, and that sort of domain, if you like, is going very well for her. It is an issue for other children, so it therefore becomes a part of the overall picture. So I guess stability in daily routines, even though this particular girl is very easily transitioning from one place to another place or one person to another person, she still probably has an extraordinary stable base within her that is still important to her. So it's likely that there are aspects of her life that are related to her routines that are important, but she manages the challenges of change very, very easily, and for her, that aspect of her would be a strength in her quality of life. So that for her is probably a good thing.
Thank you. I wanted to share a wonderful comment that a parent sent in, that her daughter is watching this webinar, and
Cool.
all throughout she has been giving big yeses and nodding for all of the enhancements to life that you have been talking about. So
well, that is very nice. That is, and hello to everybody who's there. Very nice. Yes, I'm very, very, very encouraged by this young girl's response. Very encouraged. It's wonderful.
Good. Another validation point for your research. So families are wondering, you've allowed us to record this. When they receive the link to the recording for this particular webinar, would you be okay if they shared this recording with schools and care providers so they can have further support for the things that they're asking in terms of variety of quality of life?
Yes, absolutely. From the publication point of view, it is a manuscript in preparation. So this work has not at this point had the advantage of peer review, which is an important part of um, any findings in validating the findings. We're at a close point of being able to submit the findings to be considered for publication. But when I go to conferences, I can take findings and suggest that these are the initial findings that are there, are being discussed, and I think if it's shared, that these are the findings reported at a conference that are initial findings, that is absolutely fine. And then when we have a publication, we can make sure you have access to that, and then it's a much clearer, stronger piece of work. So absolutely. And I hope that it is useful and very valuable, because that's the purpose. Perfect.
Well, yeah, demonstrating by this question, and there were many submitted in similar veins. So yes, this is incredibly valuable. Thank you. Okay, the next question in the queue is about researching the value of friendships in girls with Rett syndrome. So she's commenting that her 16-year-old daughter is going into her last grade of school, and all along her school time, she's had typical friends that have attended alongside of her over the years, and would be great candidates to ask some of these opinions about how to build better relationships. Have you considered looking at relationships, quality of life opinions outside of the family relationships?
I think from the interviews and from our data, relationships outside the family are important, and are something that often families feel challenging. Can I trust this relationship? Is how much supervision do I need to provide with this relationship? But they are very important, and I'm thinking of sometimes parents often feeling anxiety about letting, for example, a respite service have care for their daughter for periods of time. So letting go to outside relationships can be difficult. I think it makes sense that we have a variety of social connectedness, and having a small group of friends who have built a relationship with this young girl, this teenage girl, over years, to let that go would not seem to me to be right. I can't say this from having looked in detail at friendships, but from the point of view of how the quality of life is described in terms of its observable features, this would be a very good fit to the domains of social connectedness.
Great, thank you. We're at the top of the hour, but I have maybe 2 or 3 questions that I think would be really relevant to everybody. Do you have a few more minutes to stay with us,
Yep.
Jenny?
Yep,
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
The sun's well and truly up.
I know it's also getting late for some people
yes.
around the world. So we'll stay for about 5 more minutes.
Yep.
Okay, so I have a question. Some of the parents were really grateful for your comment on the difference in evaluating routines for children and women with Rett syndrome versus routines and how they're designed for people with autism.
Yes.
So a follow-on question to that is for girls who are receiving ABA therapy, which is very based on structure and routine, what are your thoughts on ABA therapy if you're familiar with it?
I'm not sure that I'm the best person to comment on a particular type of therapy Paige. I'm just not so experienced with that particular therapy, but it is. I know a little bit. I know it is based on routines, and I would be building variety into those routines for Rett syndrome, and I think this is really a lead for how we can examine those programs, and maybe there is some adapting that we could think about for with Rett syndrome. But I think we need to be a little bit more systematic in how we look at that. And I think it's a very good way to practice skills in a way that's familiar routines, but we need to, I think that's one of the areas that would be very interesting to examine with this new lens. I think it would be very useful, and I actually think practicing in routines is a very good thing to do, because it doesn't mean that you're only ever doing one thing. It can mean that you're doing several things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I've heard, yeah, I have my own perspectives on ABA therapy, and they're certainly not grounded in research, but I've heard many clinicians who are very strong in the area of Rett syndrome and research and ABA therapy be very attracted to something along the spectrum called the floor time technique, which is more relationship-based.
Yes, yes, yes. I don't know much about it, Paige. I'm sorry to say, but yes,
Oh,
I think yes.
Yeah, but I think I've seen many instances where ABA therapy has been very successful when the therapist makes the time to learn about Rett syndrome and the difference.
So a lens which is Rett syndrome specific might be very valuable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have 2 more questions, and then we'll let you go on with your day. Can you talk a little bit? A parent is saying that she often hears our girls described as moody, and how quickly it can change. We know this in the regression period. We've all experienced it, but even throughout life, how 1 hour they can be really fussy, the next one just laughing. It's something maybe we don't know is funny, and sometimes it can take longer, maybe being fussy over a couple of days. Would you say that it's fair to call our girls moody, or do you think it's more indicative of things that are going on with her internally or externally that we're just not understanding?
I actually don't know the answer to that question as to how much would be internally driven and how much would relate to what is happening that is difficult to be in the environment, that is difficult to be sensitive to. I think the sorts of things that the mothers provided us with, looking for what an issue might be. If an issue can't be found, if it looks to be a serious health issue, then obviously getting advice on that. But if she seems to be well and healthy, then change might be what's valuable. I think the word moody is possibly not quite the word to use, but we do see times when the girls have a low mood. And that mood, I think, Paige, I think this is an area which we are so poorly informed as to understanding behaviour, and then what do we do about it. And as a team, when we've discussed these findings, we see this as a platform from where we can move. Rather, I'm not sure that I have the answers to that entirely. Although I think the slide that I showed, well, what can we do to improve her quality of life, gives us some strategies that in daily life we can use right now. But I really think we need to be a little bit more systematic as to our understanding of behaviour in Rett syndrome.
I agree with you, and thank you for starting to go down that path. Okay, so we have another very practical question that is a big area that I am asked about all the time with our families, and it's in the area of toileting. And if you looked at that as the ability to have a routine, and if it's appropriate to have that be a part of the routine, if that has come up in your research or in your field experience at all.
Okay, the place where it has come up is in our gastrointestinal guidelines, and I think a routine, usually a morning routine for going to the toilet for bowel movements, was considered to be a valuable aspect of gastrointestinal sort of management, if you like. So that's as far as I could speak on that topic. I don't have any particular expertise, but that is a part of a routine that all children, all of us need an element of those sorts of routines in our life. And I would be reluctant to say that that was not important for Rett syndrome.
Great, thank you. I agree. Our experience, it just seems from families, let her take the lead, right?
Yes.
And support what she's trying to communicate to you. And if that seems to be something that she's interested, support her in that. It can be wonderful for medical and social and just
yeah. It's the social connectedness is critically important from what we gather, and that makes life for all of us, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, so I have to share. We have a question from a family. Well, actually, they're offline now. So they live in Australia and have really enjoyed hearing you speak throughout the whole week. So if you're putting up your last contact slide, just for everybody
okay.
recording.
Yes. No, in show. Contacting us, but yes, even in Australia, this email address will do. Oh, hang on. There you go.
Good.
Is that what you want to say?
To talk about support programs in Australia.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, that would be great.
Okay, fantastic. And I shared the link, as you did, with how families can contribute to the InterRett database. And
wonderful.
We really just want to reinforce to all of our families and all of our attendees that our researchers are all as genuinely concerned with the health and well-being of our kids as you are. And we're just so grateful to have you as a partner in this journey. To help us understand and help our kids today with the things that we can do in our day-to-day life to help them be the best that they can be, help them be as independent as they can be. And as we've heard from many of the webinars throughout the week, there are so many things and interventions we can do to help with their symptom management and health issues. And the research talks that we've heard have been encouraging for all areas, from neurohabilitation and things we can do to influence their quality of life, longevity, satisfaction. We can influence that. They are not, not everything is determined by this one little genetic mutation. And we don't have to just sit by and watch as Rett syndrome takes over our kids. So thank you for the work that you're doing in this area, Jenny. We're really grateful for you.
Thank you for the opportunity to collaborate. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it is time for us to conclude the webinar for today. I will export all the questions that came into the queue, and we'll work with you to get those answered. And if you can't answer them, then I'll make sure that we make an effort to reach out to people who are working in any of these specific areas, perhaps comment if that's okay with you. And I wanted to remind everybody that this isn't really the conclusion of our virtual conference. We do have one more session just scheduled next week on Thursday in the area of occupational therapy. And I know that this is a really big area of interest for families of what to do in OT. What really do we do, and what should our goals be? So I hope you join us for that webinar. And we found that this is just a tremendous platform to connect people like Jenny with families, with practical information and information to bring us all hope. So I think everyone can look forward to more webinars from rettsyndrome.org. And yeah, and we want to thank our sponsors, of course, Tobii Dynavox and Ameripride, to be able to bring these webinars at no charge to everybody and allow all donor dollars that come into us, as many as possible, to continue to support research such as Jenny's, translational research, clinical trials, basic research, gives us all hope for the future. So we thank you very much, Jenny. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will circulate the link to the recording next week. Okay, so for now,
wonderful.
We'll conclude our webinar, and I know it'll just be a goodbye until we talk to you again.
Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you, Paige, and thank you, Megan.